Hey, and welcome to the MongoDB pre-class. In this lecture, we're going to learn about introduction to the few topics about introduction to the MongoDB and all. And in live class, we're going to learn about database theory and all. Okay, so MongoDB is basically it's a database, right? Database is nothing but where you can store the your data for highest accessibility. You should be able to access that database, that data that you are storing from anywhere in the world, and it should be available forever. It should not crash or anything. You should be able to make changes in it, and if something goes wrong, database should be able to revert it back. So all these features are usually provided from a system called as a database, right? There are many such databases available. You can compare them with the any file storage that you have been doing so now by now, right? If you want to store a data, you create a JSON file, you can store data in it. It works fine, but you know the cons with it. There are to store something in a file, you have to write lots of boilerplate code, and it's not at all efficient. You cannot store data in a file, right? If that file is deleted or it's inaccessible, everything is down. So database solves all these problems. They make your data highly available, easily available for everyone. They give you security, transaction support, speed, performance, throughput, and everything. So MongoDB is one of the database that is we call as a NoSQL database. The more about this is covered in the theory itself in the live lecture. So basically, you don't have to follow any structure. Okay, MongoDB lets you store whatever you want in it. You don't have to tell MongoDB how it's going to look like. You don't have to tell MongoDB what are the relations between the data will be there. Okay, you want to store a user's object, you can store that. Later, you decide that now you want to store a animal object, that is information about some animal, like breed, dog, and species, and so on, right? So you can store that in the same collection. You don't have to change anything. So MongoDB is in terms of flexible. In that terms, they let you do. They let you like store whatever you want and retrieve in the same speed as well. They support aggregation, something called as, so basically retrieving a data with multiple ways, something like applying a function on it, and then whichever data is passing that function, retrieve that data, and so on. Sharding is something like you can basically store one single database into multiple regions in the world. Like one can be in USA, one can be in Europe, and one can be in China, and so on. This helps you this helps you make your data highly available easily. So what you can do is, if user saves his information, updates his information from Europe, that information gets replicated throughout the other database in the world. That is nothing but sharding, right? So it's automatically backed up for you. So just in case the database in USA goes down, the most immediate database after that, the most next available database immediately gets up, and which has the same data that already the data in the database in the USA had, right? So now user will not even care. Now, in terms of user, your system is available forever, like 24/7, right? Even though database was down in USA, he can still connect to some other database. It might be a little bit slower than what it was used to be in the same database in USA, but that's fine. Your data is at least available, right? You did not lose any data. So these are some of the features that MongoDB gives you: performance, scalability. So why would you use something that is so flexible? The flexibility is of course a feature, but in some cases you may also not want that, which you're gonna see soon. The alternative to MongoDB was something called as relational database or SQL database, or we can call them SQL database as well. So SQL was restrictive. It's one of the oldest technology to store and retrieve the data. Basically, you can create tables and you can store the relations in data as in relations. And it turns out it's a bit restrictive because you first have to tell your database that you're going to store a user who's going to have name as a string, age as a number, and so on. And then later, if you realize that a user may also have a, let's say, salary, but you haven't told your database that there is a salary column in your database, you cannot update that. So SQL is supposed to be SQL is tend to be a little bit restrictive. You cannot store whatever you want. You have to first tell your database, these are the things I'll be storing, and these will be the relations, and these will be the data types, and so on. And that's why it also needs a schema. Schema means basically like which type and what type and so on, right? Which column has what type, how to validate that, and so on. But MongoDB solves that problem for you. MongoDB is very, very flexible. You don't have to have a schema. You don't have to have a model of your database, how it's going to look like, how many entities will be there, or is there one thing is related to another, or so on. If you still want, you can do that, but you don't have to. MongoDB is by default, it lets you store whatever you want. And the data that you'll be storing will be just a JavaScript object. So imagine like a JS object, like const user is equal to user object. You can just take this object and put it in MongoDB as it is, which is why it's very, very easy to learn MongoDB. You don't have to learn a new technology at all, unlike SQL. So SQL is a language. You have to learn this language to work with the relational database. In MongoDB, you don't have to learn anything new. All you have to learn is the function names. So the use cases of MongoDB are very pretty straightforward wherever you need the flexible data, right? Wherever you are not certain what the data will be. The one of the example for this is social network, right? Imagine a Facebook. So you'll be creating when you create your account, that's fine. But later you can upload any post, right? A post can have whatever you want. Like it could have an image, you can upload an audio, video, you can just upload text. Text can have multiple types of data in it, like it can have header, like bold text, italic text. You don't have a fixed rule that a post is going to be text, nothing like that. User can upload anything he wants. And images also, it can be a gallery, it can be editable image, and so on, right? So whenever you don't have strict data requirement, wherever you want flexibility. The second use case of MongoDB is high availability. Because of the sharding, MongoDB automatically handles all these things for you. So whenever you need data to be available forever, like as much as possible, if something goes down, the other thing should be able to replace with it automatically and immediately without even a millisecond of delay. So MongoDB handles that for you. So MongoDB is one of the best case to use in such cases. Because it's distributed as well, it handles all the data distributions and all itself. All you have to do is just configure the endpoints for you. And the another common use case of MongoDB is when you want reading a lot more, when your reading is more important than writing. So this concept is not that hard to understand, because think in terms of there are a database, like you either read from it or you write to it, right? It could be like create, update, or delete operation, but you either are going to write to database or you're going to read to a database. Now database job is to support both the operations, but in general sense, database can support either of them very, very efficiently. Supporting both of them is a little bit hard and tricky. So what MongoDB gives you is the read speeds. MongoDB, because it's high availability database, it gives you read speed a lot more. That does not mean writing is bad or it's going to cause problem or something. No, it's just like it guarantees you that whenever you're going to try to read a data, it will be there. But in terms of writing, MongoDB doesn't guarantee that. The transaction support for MongoDB is not as good as the relational databases like SQL and so on, right? So yeah, this is the basics of the when you should use it. And of course, when the point when you should not use the database is when your write is important than read. The example for this is something that like banking and payment. When you want 100% guarantee that your data is getting stored no matter what, it is getting returned to the database, than reading, right? So you don't usually read your bank statements or all that in that regularly. So when the right here is more important, because you want to be sure that your data is getting stored successfully no matter what. It's okay if I read it a little bit slower and read it later, but writing and transaction is something that, now this transaction is not the money transaction. This transaction is something we'll see in the live class. It basically means whatever you're doing is guaranteed to be done on the database. If you're writing something, so let's say you're writing 3-4 lines of statements as in records. So you're trying to store 3-4 records in a row in the database. The transaction guarantees that all 3-4 of them will be stored. If the third one fails, second and first will be rolled back. They will not be stored. This is nothing but a transaction. And you want to, if you want such guarantees, you should look for something that is relational. You should look for something like SQL database, Postgres or MySQL and so on. In MongoDB, there are three basic concepts. The one is the document itself. The document is the smallest record of a data. So imagine you are creating a blogging application. Okay, so a blog is gonna, in blogging application, you're gonna have like users, multiple users. Imagine like a medium.com kind of a site. So you're gonna have multiple users, multiple topics, multiple blogs, pages, and so on, right? So in that case, a document will be one blog. So one document represents one smallest entity possible. So what a blog is going to have, it's going to have an author, it's going to have when it was written, what the blog is about, like the text of the blog, the tags, what is the blog related to, and the comments of a blog. Now you see, a document is nothing but a JS object. Or what you are seeing in front of you, it's nothing. It's just a string array of objects where each key is another string. So this is how a document can be anything that you want. It's as flexible as you want. Apart from that, MongoDB gives you some inbuilt. Now this syntax is not JS syntax, right? Because we haven't seen such way to, not colon here. We haven't seen such a way to store something in a JSON object yet. So this is the part that is given by MongoDB itself. Every document that you're going to store will be having one underscore ID property on it. This ID ensures direct access to this document when we are going to try to access it. So we will learn about this more soon, but basically you can store whichever keys properties you want in database, and one part, the one smallest entity, will be called as a document. Now, this is just a blogging example. Now, a collection is this bigger, somewhat bigger entity than a document, and it is nothing but a collection of documents. So you're going to have multiple such blog posts, right? You can store this in one collection called as posts. So that you can easily later find collection like this. Not just find, it's about anything. So you know where all the documents are stored. It's just a place where all the documents are stored. So you're going to create a collection. You can call it posts, you can call it blogs, or whatever you want. And then you have a post collection. Now you know every single document about post will be stored inside this. Now you can store inside this with this post.insert, post.add, or you can find, get the document like this, post.find, where author is Jack. You can also delete post.delete and so on. So basically it's just a place where all the documents are stored. Okay. And similar to that, a database. Now this is a different terminology when we are referring to the database as not as a software. This is like another, like even bigger picture than collections. So multiple group of collection is called as a database. You can have multiple such databases. So sticking to the same example, in a database of a blogging application, you're going to have first, here we created post collection, right? So now you can create users collection as well in the same database. So to store the users, and users collection is going to have user documents, multiple users. Now you can also create, let's say, pages collection to store multiple pages. You can also create topics collection. Multiple such collections together will be stored in a single place called as a database. This is also serves the same purpose. You need to know which collection is stored where. So it's just going to have a name. So, and you can use that name to get the collection, and from that collection, you can get the document. Okay, so that is the basics of the theory. I can show you if you have the MongoDB installed. What you can do is you can go through the installation steps online, look for the community edition, I'll provide the steps in the LMS, the notes as well. Make sure you go through them, install the MongoDB, and once you have the MongoDB installed, there are multiple ways to access it. The oldest way was with a command line tool called as Mongo. If you hit enter, it's going to take you to the some text, and there is a Node.js type of REPL at the bottom. Let me take it up. So there is a Node.js type of REPL at the bottom where you see you can type anything and you get the output back, just like Node.js. The reason for that is internally, what you are seeing in front of you is just a JavaScript REPL. Here, you can access most of the JS commands as it is, but it's made for, now this is, you see, but it's made for MongoDB specifically. It's not made for JavaScript. It cannot evaluate your JavaScript. So because console is not defined, that means, but you can see, you can evaluate expressions that are related to MongoDB. So ultimately it's going to work the same way as the Node.js REPL was working, except this is for MongoDB itself. So now you can run the commands that are related to MongoDB here, like show DBs is one command. You don't need to give semicolon. So show DBs. This command will, if you run this, it's gonna give you the list of all the databases that you have in your system, like this. So I have admin, I have config, I have express session, local, and production. I have these many databases. If I want to enter into some database, what I'll have to do is I'll have to say use and the database name. So let's use local database. So if I use local, it's telling me that switch to DB local. Now I'm inside the database. Okay, in this local database, I'm going to have multiple collections. To do the same thing in some other way, but with more interactive way, there is another terminal command called as Mongo sh, Mongo shell. It's a newer tool than Mongo itself. It was created by Mongo creators only, but it's a little more interactive. Okay, you get the better output and readability, and there is also tab support and so on. So this is full-fledged REPL, right? So here you have access to more functionality, functions, and overall most of the JS console. So if I just press tab, you see I get most of the the eval, FS, HTTP, crypto. These are just Node.js modules. So you have access to Node.js module as well as some of the MongoDB modules. So BSON, Boolean, DB query, eJSON. You see these are not Node.js modules. These are MongoDB modules. So Mongo sh is the tool which will help you write the queries by using Node.js as well. So this is internally uses Node.js itself, but what you can do now is you can run the same commands here. Show DBs. It's going to show you the list of DBs. You can say use. You can also press tab if you don't want to type any, and it will autocomplete for you. Switch to DB local. Now I'm on the local database, right? So if I want to switch to another database, if I want to use another database, just write use. Let's say express session, press tab, enter. I'm going to switch to another database. Now this database, like I said, will have collections, right? If we run the command show DBs for listing the databases, we can also say run the command show collections, and it's going to tell you the collection. It's going to tell you how many collections you have. So if I switch to another database, let's say use production and show collections, I have these many collections in it, right? So you can have multiple such collections, and this will be the same no matter which database you are using. And obviously, if you're going to have multiple documents in each and every collections. So what I'm showing you is actually a production database of a real life product, but I cannot show you the documents inside them, but we are going to learn about them in the live class. Okay, so make sure you try it out. Make sure you install the MongoDB, work around with it. If you don't want to install, there are other ways to install directly. There are other ways to install MongoDB as well, called as Docker. So if you are interested in Docker way, you can try that as well. Okay, but overall, that is all for this video. Thank you for joining. I'll see you guys next time.